welcome to Gooseberry.
We are your hosts,
This is Nidhi.
and I am Sonia.
Yes. In our previous episode, we talked about the case study of Little Albert, which was based on the concept of classical conditioning. We went over it very briefly, hence, our topic for today is classical conditioning and operant conditioning. But before we dive into the discussion, Sonia, what do you think learning is? Like, what comes into your mind whenever you hear the word learning?
I think of a classroom, like a blackboard and the teacher teaching her students, or maybe a professor teaching his students. Because depending on which phase of my life I am in, I'll either think of a school or a college or a university. Another thing that I think of is like when something goes wrong in your life or like things don't turn out the way you want them to. People have this habit of saying, oh, it's a learning experience for you, it's life's lesson. So those are like the two main things that I associate learning to, but more towards like the school and education part of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, like, whenever I read the word learning or whenever I hear it, I immediately picture a classroom, whether it be back to my school or whether it back to the college classroom. I see a blackboard, I see a professor, I see books, or like you said, life lessons. Um, so definitely that. But according to psychologists, because like we need a definition, a hardcore definition. So according to psychologists, learning is a long-term behavioral change. Now, what does long-term behavioral change means? Take for instance, brushing your teeth. Since we were kids, we have been told that brushing our teeth twice a day is important. Like you have to brush your teeth. If you can't brush it twice, at least once a day, but you have to brush it. It's it is like now a mechanical aspect of our routine is to brush our teeth twice a day. But you're like you will wonder how, but like how is this a long-term behavior change? I don't think you knew how to brush your teeth when you were like one. I think your parent used to help you. Like like imagine Tarzan. I don't think he knows how to brush his teeth. I don't think he brushes his teeth twice a day every time regularly. It's not a mechanical aspect of his routine, but it's a mechanical aspect of our routine. So because it's a long-term behavioral change. So now that we know what learning is, let's get into classical conditioning. What exactly is classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is a way of learning where a stimulus that triggers a biological response is paired with a new stimulus that then results in the same reaction. Now you are like, what are you saying? You said the same thing in the last episode too. What does this mean? You will get into that very soon. So in 1890s, Russian physiologist called as Ivan Pavlov, he conducted some famous experiments on dogs based on classical conditioning. He showed the dog some food and he rang a bell at the same time. After a while, the dog would associate the ringing of the bell with the food. They would learn that once they heard the bell, they would get fed. Eventually, just ringing the bell made the dog salivate. They learned to expect food at the sound of the bell. So what happened here is like um the physiologist here, Ivan Pavlov, he noticed that okay, let me first tell you how he got actually inspired to do this experiment. He noticed that in the lab, the dogs always used to start drooling or salivating whenever the intern who used to feed the dogs their food will go by their cage because the dogs were so used to seeing the same intern give the food. So now he started wondering, oh, is this are they like associating the interns with with them getting the food? So he decided to do this experiment. So he what he did was like he started showing bringing the food to the dogs, and at the same time he there was a bell that he rung, like he's serving the food and there's a bell that is ringing. So this was repeated for a longer period of time, and eventually uh, just the bell was ringing and no food was served. But since the dogs started associating like ringing of the bell as getting the food, they started salivating, they started drooling. Because under normal condition, the sight and smell of food causes the dog to salivate. Here, we call the food an unconditioned stimuli and call salivation an unconditioned response. Just like us, because whenever we see a pickle jar, a jar, like we immediately our mouth immediately starts watering. It's not under our control. uh, the pickle here is unconditioned stimulus, and our response of our mouth starting water, us start we don't drool like dogs do, but our mouth start watering, whenever we see pickle is the unconditioned response. So no one trains a dog to salivate over some steak. However, when we pair an unconditioned stimuli like food with something that was previously neutral, like the sound of the bell, the neutral stimuli becomes a conditioned stimulus, and thus classical conditioning was discovered. So the ringing of the bell was previously neutral. The ringing of the bell didn't, you know, cause a reaction from the dogs. Maybe, yeah, the ears were perked or something like that, but they didn't just, they never started drooling just by, oh, the bell is ringing, oh, I should now start drooling, I should start salivating. It was never the case. But since they paired it with the unconditioned stimulus here, which caused them, which was the food here, uh, the ringing of the bell here becomes the conditioned stimuli. So this was how,
So,
yeah.
so we know like how it works for animals and like dogs specifically, but does classical conditioning work any different in human beings or is it the same?
Put it frankly, the same way. If you ask me, like, no, we are not going to start drooling or like, because we are not dogs every time we see food. But to explain it to this, let me tell you an example. Like, imagine that you are going to a doctor to get a shot, okay? And the doctor is like, don't worry, this won't hurt a bit. And then the doctor gives you the most painful shot you've ever had. And a few weeks later, you have to go to the dentist for your regular checkup. And the dentist starts to put a mirror in your mouth to examine your teeth. And the dentist says, don't worry, this won't hurt a bit. Even though, even though you know the mirror won't hurt, you jump out of the chair and run screaming from the room. Because here the when you went to get a shot, the word this one hurt a bit becomes a conditioned stimulus when they were paired with the pain from the shot, the unconditioned stimulus, which was followed by a conditioned response of getting the heck out of there. So here the word this one hurt a bit. This was the conditioned stimuli, and the pain from the shot, which was paired with the words here, this was the unconditioned stimuli, sorry, not the response, unconditioned stimuli. And your response of getting the heck out of there, this was your conditioned response. So if this was like a huge example, but to make it more simpler for you to understand and for everyone else, I think because most of us have experienced this, and I also put up a poll on our stories, not exactly a poll, like a question where we're playing a game where I put up some words and something, and I wanted to know the first thing that comes into your mind. And I had put this, we need to talk. The amount of you guys who said no, we don't, I fucked up, the amount of response, like, because we all know the moment I hear the word we need to talk, the amount of stress and anxiety that I go through, like, OMG, bro, no, we don't need to talk, like, yeah,
Ultimate adrenaline rush that we get just out of like 4 words, bro. It's
because
like, oh my God, you go
there,
back a week, you go back a month, and you're like, okay, where did I go wrong? What did I
yeah,
do incorrectly? Like, what can I get yelled at for?
yeah, exactly. Like, what did I do to, like, you're saying this to me? Because we need to talk never means good news, okay? Never means, like, if if it is a good news for you, you are like one of the million guy, not a one of, no, what am I saying? That's very rare, bro. I don't trust you if that's good news for you. Or the, you can tell me everything. I won't be mad. Um, how many of you, uh, well, have, fallen into this trap?
Me.
Yes, me too. Because like we all know that they, in fact, will be very, very mad. Yeah. So yeah. So
That's
every
where the trust issues began from.
exactly. So these two words, even though like in the dentist in the mirror situation, you know that, oh, this is not going to hurt, but because of your previous experience, this we need to talk. This your immediate conditioned response is to feel anxious or just to get the heck out of there because we don't need to talk. I don't need to talk with you. Bye, tata. So yes. But here are some few things to remember. Uh, on the experiment part. This was reported by Ivan Pavlov. He said that learning occurred most rapidly when the interval between the sound and the appearance of the food was short. Now, what does this means exactly? Do you think that if the ringing of the bell was done 10 minutes earlier before the food was served to the dog and not at the same time, do you think the dog would learn to associate the bell?
No, because the time interval is too large to even connect the two stimuli to each other.
Yes, exactly. The second is like the second important part is that the saliva that was produced by the sound, it differed in composition from that produced by the food, which means that the conditioned response was not an exact replica of the unconditioned response. So what happened here was like the drool that was produced when the food was served, this differed in composition then to the drool that was produced when the food wasn't served, but just the ringing of the bell was done. So this says that the conditioned response is not an exact replica of the unconditioned response. Also, while there are several forms of conditioning, such as forward and backward conditioning, classical conditioning cannot create new behavior or be used for training, but instead triggers involuntary biological response. But, contrary to the statement that classical conditioning cannot create new behavior, it can indeed lead to development of new behaviors or modification of existing one. How? By establishing association between the stimuli and response, individual can learn to exhibit behaviors that were not present initially. This process involves shaping behavior through reinforcement and repetition. Sonia will be getting into depth what reinforcement is later on when she will be explaining us operant conditioning. So I'm not going to tell you what reinforcement means, but I will be telling you what forward conditioning and backward conditioning means. So in forward conditioning, the non-neutral stimuli is presented after the neutral stimuli. So you're like, I didn't get it. So let me give you an example. Dentist. You're going to the dentist. What is the immediate thought that comes to your mind, Sonia?
Vanilla cup.
Yeah, it's the same with me. Because I feel like a lot of us tend to associate like okay, whenever you go to a dentist, you know that after I go to the dentist, I'm gonna get a ice cream. Because the going to the dentist is equal to getting a ice cream. This is forward conditioning. The non-neutral stimuli here is the ice cream, and the neutral stimuli here is the dentist, like going to the dentist. Um, Now to backward conditioning. Backward conditioning is when the non-neutral stimuli is presented before the neutral stimuli. For this, one example is when a child receives a piece of candy before going to the dentist. The piece of candy here is a non-neutral stimuli, and before going to the dentist is the neutral stimuli. First of all, bad idea. Like, what are you thinking?
Please don't do that.
Yeah,
Please don't do that. It'll just mess up your visit to the dentist even more.
yeah. Or I feel like a greater example would be when the dentist gives the child some soft toy to the child so that the child can just shut up and open his mouth. Yeah. uh, So
I've had that happen to me. I
You-
was talking constantly and not letting her like check the back of my mouth. She got so irritated.
oh
She's like,
my
"Oh my
God.
God, Sonia, look at this crocodile. Wow." And then I shut down.
Yes, but um, forward conditioning is actually more effective than backward conditioning because it's quite obvious. How many times do you remember getting a ice cream after going to the dentist, and how many times you remember getting a chocolate before going to the dentist?
My mother was very aware and self-aware and everything, so she would never give me a candy before going to the
Yeah,
dentist.
okay, yeah, but how many times do you think of you getting the crocodile, and how many times you think of getting the ice cream?
Crocodile, not as much. I just remember one incident, but ice cream, I remember like almost every time we went to the
Yeah,
dentist. That night
because
we were like, "Oh, ice cream party."
yes, because you tend to remember things that happened later on more than what happened before. That's why forward conditioning is much more effective than backward conditioning when it comes to establishing association between stimuli. Now, the fourth and the most important one because this never happened in the little Albert experiment. When we talk,
Should
yeah,
have happened.
we can almost entirely undo the conditioning. This happens through extinction when we repeatedly present the conditioned stimuli in the absence of the unconditioned stimulus. So, when we talk about undoing conditioning, it means changing a learned behavior. For example, um, imagine you have a pet dog that gets excited every single time you pick up its leash because it knows that, oh, we are going for a walk. This is the conditioned response. Now, if you want to change this behavior, you can do something called as extinction. Extinction involves repeatedly showing the dog the leash, but not actually taking it for a walk. Over time, the dog will stop getting excited when it sees the leash because it no longer associate it with going for a walk. So in simpler terms, extinction is like breaking the connection between two things that were linked before. By showing one thing over and over without the expected outcomes, the brain starts to unlearn the association between them. So even in this dog experiment of Ivan Pavlov, after some time, just the repetition of just ringing the bell and not bringing the food for a longer period of time, extinction happened. The dog no longer started associating the ringing of the bell as of the dog getting the food because, like, come on, even the dog has your brains. Like, it's just like a ski. After some time, when the same thing happens, and you don't get the expected response that you want, the your brain will slowly start to reassociate the thing that you associated with. So yes, this. Now, let's talk about some examples about how classical conditioning is used. Now we saw, because we saw what classical conditioning is, we saw the experiment, we saw what forward and backward conditioning is. But how is classical conditioning used? So, classical conditioning has been widely used in various training scenarios, including animal training and therapeutic intervention. This includes phobias and anxiety disorder using exposure therapy. But let's go to the common example where it's used widely. The first and the foremost is advertisement. You're like, classical conditioning and advertisement, huh? How does this collect? So, advertising often relies on classical conditioning, using logos and desirable stimuli to associate positive feelings with a brand. Even for this, when I put the game on the stories, like the poll, and when I said Lipton green tea, or when I said Colgate, there were three responses that, like, even if so many people responded, these three responses were the same from everyone. They were divided into three groups. First was like the tagline, Adat Dal Do. Second one was the here, um, logo or the or the actor that was Shraddha Kapoor, and the third was like the feeling, like lipton green tea. Oh, I will get thin, or oh, I will lose weight. So these were the three different answers because this, or when I put Colgate, the immediate uh response to that is like, oh, white teeth. And what does white teeth makes you feel, Sonia?
I feel like very nice. I feel like, oh my God, I have such a pretty smile.
Yeah,
Wow, people are
you
gonna like my smile.
yes, you feel confident about yourself because no one likes yellow teeth unless and until you are the Puri Pari from Chota Bheem. But
Yeah. Oh my God, traumatic.
I hate her so much. Any yeah. So this is how advertisement mostly use it because like every single time you see a particular brand, even though even though Lipton green tea, you see the packet, but you don't see Shraddha Kapoor with it. There is no photo of her. You will still think about her. Why? Because it's so heavily used and you immediately associate her with that particular brand. And like I said, advertisement use this to associate positive feelings, but they can also use it to associate negative feelings, quote. And if they negative feelings, as if most of the time health food brands do this, uh when you see like imagine this health food brand, okay, and the brand ambassador is a model with a perfect zero figure, and the moment you see that, you feel like you see the model with the perfect zero figure, and then you look at yourself and you are like, oh, I don't have that. And what makes you and that makes you feel insecure, that makes you feel bad about yourself. And now every single time you see that health food product, even though the model is not there, but you immediately think about that, you immediately feel bad about yourself. And if the brand is doing a very good job of advertising its product, you might actually go and buy that. So yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
this is
works for a lot of people. Most of the people are very like gullible, so they fall for it and they are like, ah, it's like you associate the actor or actress with the brand, and so you feel like using it will make you like the actor or actress.
that's why a mascot and a brand ambassador is so important when you're putting
Yeah,
a
it's very
product,
important.
because you immediately associate stuff like you, oh, some brand has a very cute logo like some cartoon, and you feel happy, and like every single time you see that logo without the brand, you will immediately think about the brand. Even
Brand colors also matter because of
yes,
that.
yes, exactly. um and the second is phobias. How exactly this classical conditioning helps in phobias? So with the help of classical conditioning and with the help of exposure therapy, you can a person can get over the phobia they have, you can cure it. The third part is exercising. If you're someone who wants to start going to the gym or start exercising regularly, how can you make use of classical conditioning to improve it? I have not tried this, but I would like to try. And this, so what you have to do is that you have, okay, you want to go to the gym that is there, and all of your friends are going, but you want to go, but you simply feel like not going there because you're scared, you're intimidated. But I feel like most of the time you don't start doing something not because you feel like, oh, it's going I will be tired and all, but it's because the first step, just going there, because you have feel like, oh, you already see something in a very negative light. And when you imagine gym, you imagine the men with big muscles and stuff, all of them working out on those dumbbells and stuff, and then that scares you. You immediately like, oh, I'm already scared. You immediately feel
Yeah,
you have
it's also because our brains are like designed to keep us safe and like help
yeah.
us survive. So that's our default as humans.
Yeah, because the very first important thing is that to go there, and most of us uh fail in this only. We are very unsuccessful to complete this task only. That is the reason why we don't do stuff. Like if you want to try something difficult, because it doesn't, because once you get there, like you said about the getting out of the bed and just putting your clothes on, then you're like, oh, abhi to kapde pehne, then now I will have to just go
Yeah,
down.
taking steps towards reducing the initial friction towards the activity.
Yes. So what you have to do here is like go to the gym, don't do anything, just take a mat with you, relax and listen to your favorite music. Repeat this for a week at least. Don't do anything, just relax, leave this. The gym is your happy place. You just go there to relax. Now what happened is like after a week, start going there again, but this time for starting to to whatever reason, building muscles, losing weight, whatever reason you're going to the gym. Now what happens is like, when you started going to the gym for the very first week, you started associating it to a place where you're relaxed, where you feel happy. So just the thought of going to the gym makes you happy, even though now you're going there for working out and exercising, and there is nothing relaxed about exercising. But since you have conditioned your brain to think like, oh, going to the gym, that means I'm going to be relaxed because you repeated it for a week. So that's how it's going to help you. So I want someone of you to try this and just let us know in the comment if like it worked with you. Because the fourth one is focusing. How you can improve your focusing with classical conditioning. Um, is like okay. Uh, you want to increase your focus while you're studying. So what you can do is like first of all get rid of the distraction, because like whatever techniques you're trying, but if you have not gotten rid of the distraction, it's not going to work. So when you're studying, take a specific beverage. I For this example, I'm talking about a peppermint tea, because it's something that you don't drink generally. And then you'll be like, oh, why not chai or coffee? I have it easily available. I drink it every time. Yeah, you can't use it. Why? Because you use it every time. You need something that is not that you drink it every single while where you're outside or when you're friends. Take something that,
Something that you're not used to, basically.
yes,
Something new that you can start new associations with.
yes, something new, and also something that you will not use it outside your study area. So, uh, if you're studying and whenever you feel like, oh, I'm losing my focus, just take a sip of the tea, take a sip, and then start studying again. So, when you repeat this technique for a while, your brain immediately starts associating the tea as something that will enhance your attention. This is your focusing drink. The moment you drink this peppermint tea, oh, I know I'm going to start focusing now. Because even though if it's not with the tea, I think our brain works in a very funny way. If something good happens and you're wearing some particular bracelet, then you start using the bracelet as a good luck charm, even though that bracelet does
Yeah.
nothing.
It's like, oh, this is my lucky bracelet. I did very well on the exam. So now every exam you wear that bracelet and come.
Yeah, this was that. But also, this technique is very, very vulnerable to extinction, because if the conditioned stimulus is presented alone for a several trials, it causes the conditioned response to diminish. So, what exactly does this means? The peppermint tea which you're drinking, if you drink this outside when you're not studying, like you drink this when you're at a cafe with your friend, you drink this while you're watching a movie, you drink this while you're somewhere else, just when you're not studying, you no longer associate it with the attention enhancement or the focusing tea, whatever your brain associated it with. Because now, when you're studying, when you're drinking the tea, you won't be thinking about this. Oh, I drank the tea, now I will be focusing. You will be thinking about what the movie which you watched last night while you're drinking about this tea, because the link is now broken. So, yep. The main reason why you can't take normal coffee or chai here, because you drink it every single time, like morning, evening, night. No, don't drink it in night, but like you get it. So this is how you can how classical conditioning is used in daily life and how you can use it to make your life better. So, yep, this was all about classical conditioning. We saw the what classical conditioning was, we saw the experiment, we saw forward, backward, we saw how advertisement make use of it, and then we saw how you can use it to improve some, habits in our life. So that was it. From my side, I will let Sonia take over and let her talk about operant conditioning. So yes, here Sonia, take the invisible mic that I have. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so starting off with a bang for operant conditioning, Skinner rejected classical conditioning
Oh,
as an explanation
oh my.
for complex human behavior. So he proposed that operant conditioning focused more on causes and consequences of actions in order to understand behavior. And since human beings are more complex beings than animals, we are not as simple to understand and study as animals. That's why we needed something that was equally complex for human behavior, which was operant conditioning. So, who exactly is Skinner and why is he rejecting classical conditioning? B.F. Skinner was an American psychologist known for his impact on behaviorism. Now, for like a definition of operant conditioning is a theory of learning where behavior is influenced by its consequences. So, behavior that is rewarded is likely to be repeated because the consequence was positive, and behavior that is punished will be repeated less frequently because the consequence was negative. Operant conditioning is also known as instrumental conditioning, and Skinner's operant conditioning process was named as Skinner's theory of learning. Like, bro just wanted some footage, and it was founded based on Thorndike's law of effect, which was from 1898. And this principle stipulates that actions that produce agreeable outcomes, so outcomes which are liked by the individual, are more probable to be repeated because they were positive, while those that result in disagreeable outcomes, which means the ones that were not really liked by the individual, are less probable to be repeated. So the key concepts that we'll be covering under operant conditioning today include reinforcement, which is divided into positive and negative reinforcement, and punishment, which is divided into, again, positive and negative punishment. So reinforcement, we heard the word reinforcement for the first time in this episode when we were listening to the part of classical conditioning explained by Nidhi. So what exactly is reinforcement? Reinforcement was a term introduced by Skinner into the law of effect. So reinforcement is behavior. Basically, reinforcement is like behavior that is reinforced tends to be repeated, which means it strengthens like the behavior, and behavior that is not reinforced extinguishes. We learned how extinction works in classical conditioning. The similar way, the behavior is weakened because it has not been reinforced. So there were no positive consequences of that certain behavior. So the individual tends to not repeat it then because the individual didn't face any consequence that he or she liked or enjoyed. Now we'll talk about Skinner's box. So Skinner's box was used for his operant conditioning experiments. A Skinner's box is a device that records and modifies an animal's behavior through the system of rewards or punishments for the specific actions committed by the animals. Now, in a chamber, it's basically like a chamber, the size of a shoebox per se, and it's since it's the size of a shoebox, it's smaller than the ground that small animals would normally be given to like walk across. Like maybe you find like rats in the cupboards of your house sometimes, man. Like your house is pretty huge compared to the size of a shoebox. So it's often used to conduct operant conditioning research with animals. And this chamber, since it's small, you don't use big animals, you use small animals. So animals like dun dun dun
Rats.
rats. So
What does rats remind us about?
little Albert, my God, we're back to the lore.
See,
So,
this is classical
so
conditioning. We associate rats to
exactly,
little Albert.
we are still on our agenda, guys. So within this chamber, there is like usually a lever or a key that can be pressed by the animal, and that operates to provide the animal with like food or water, something like that, a source within the chamber, which acts as a reinforcer. So now we are going to talk about the first type of reinforcement, which is positive reinforcement. Now, in positive reinforcement, a response or behavior is strengthened by rewards, which leads to the repetition of the desired behavior, because the reward which is given here is the reinforcing stimulus. That is the reason why we repeat the action. Now, there are two types of reinforcers that affect the way reinforcement functions: primary and secondary reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are stimuli that are like naturally reinforcing to us because they don't require us to learn anything new. We just directly associate them and they directly satisfy a need of ours, like food or water. Food directly satisfies the need of hunger, and water directly satisfies the need of the feeling of thirst. So now that we've looked at primary reinforcers, and we know that they're like very basic, primitive things that we require as human beings. Secondary reinforcers are slightly more complex than primary reinforcers because these are the stimuli that are reinforced through their association with primary reinforcers. So secondary reinforcers depend upon primary reinforcers. They're related to primary reinforcers because the example of secondary reinforcers includes money or school grades, for example. So money is a huge motivator.
Yeah,
If you say money
definitely.
does not motivate you, you are lying. Go fix that. So money acts as a huge motivator for us. And the reason why money is a secondary reinforcer is because money does not directly satisfy any need of us. It is linked to the needs that we need to satisfy. Like we need money to satisfy needs like food and water because you need to pay for the grocery that you're buying, and you need to pay for the water supply so that you continue getting water in your taps in your house. So even though money does not directly satisfy a need because it's linked to a primary reinforcer and it acts as a huge motivator, it is known as a secondary
Yeah,
reinforcer.
okay. So secondary reinforcers alone can't do anything. But because they're linked to the primary reinforcers, they act like motivators, right? Because money alone
Exactly.
without no
Yes.
value is nothing. It's just paper. But money,
Yeah, it's
because
just paper.
yeah,
Because then it's like okay, if you don't have anything that you can purchase or get out of owning money and having money, you won't feel the need to even have money to begin with.
mm,
It's like that.
yeah, definitely.
Now,
That's why the
one of
rich
the
don't
experiments.
work. And yeah, okay, you
We are
can
not
continue.
haters, guys. Don't worry. If there is any rich person listening, hello.
We love you.
Thanks.
Please sponsor us. Yes.
So we have two experiments that we'll be looking into. The first experiment is under positive reinforcement and how Skinner demonstrated positive reinforcement. It was through an experiment using his Skinner's box that we heard about a few minutes ago. Now here what he did was he put a hungry rat into his Skinner's box, and that box has a lever like we listened to earlier. And now the rat is used to like huge grounds where it can run freely and like loiter around, move around without any restriction as such. But now, after being put into a small shoebox sized chamber, it gets like frantic to get out of it. So now, as the rat is frantically moving around to figure out how it can get out of this bloody box it's been put into, it accidentally hits the lever. And once it hits the lever, a food pellet is dropped into the container, which is part of the Skinner's box. So now the rat is like, oh wow, what did I just do that led to me getting food? And so over time, as the rat keeps pressing the lever, the rat realizes that, oh, because I'm pressing this thing over here, I'm getting food. So now whenever the rat is hungry, it knows that it is supposed to press the lever, and within a split second it will get the food. Like it is fully assured that the moment I press this, I'm going to get food. So like the moment I feel that slight pang of hunger, I know that I have to press the lever. So this is what strengthens a behavior by providing a consequence that an individual finds rewarding. Here, the rat finds the food pellet being delivered as a rewarding stimulus.
Okay, so
Now,
reinforce. Okay, before like you go ahead, reinforcement is something that you want, like a behavior that is encouraged, right?
yes,
When you want to encourage some kind of behavior, that is reinforcement, correct?
yes. So
Okay, cool.
reinforcement works towards encouraging and strengthening a certain type of behavior or a certain action.
Okay.
Now, under positive reinforcement, we have like a specific form of positive reinforcement. It's a very unique form that it has. It's known as the Premack principle. Now, here what happens is two activities are used. One is a high probability behavior or a preferred activity, and another is a low probability behavior or a less preferred activity. So if, for example, for a child, playing video games or being able to watch their favorite series is a high probability behavior which they prefer to do most of the time. So what their mother does is she links them doing their homework, which is a less preferred activity or a low probability behavior, to being able to play games later on. So what she does is she says that if you finish this particular piece of homework within an hour, you will be able to get to play an hour of your of your favorite video game, or you'll be able to watch one episode of the series that you're watching right now, because the high probability or the preferred activity is used as a reward if the low probability activity is completed. So you are bound to complete the low probability activity because you're being rewarded with something that you really love to do, or like thoroughly enjoy.
Like how your father promised you to get that iPhone if you manage to score about 90. I know some people, okay? I know you. I know you're listening. And I hope you don't get that iPhone. Anyways, bye.
So this method incentivizes like the less desirable behavior by associating it with a desirable outcome. So this is why the less favorable behavior is like strengthened over time. Mothers are very smart, guys. I'm not saying fathers are dumb, just mothers are very smart, because my mother used to do this when I was younger, worked like a charm. Now I do it to myself.
Oh, same, same. Like when I was in like fifth grade and like sixth, seventh, it was like if you study, do your homework right now, then on Saturday, Sunday, you will get to play Roblox for like this much 1 hour. You will have to do your work and studies, then only you will get to play it.
Yeah, everything is consequential.
Yeah.
So the next concept we have under reinforcement is negative reinforcement. So negative reinforcement is the termination of an unpleasant state following a response. It's known as negative reinforcement because it is the removal of an adverse stimulus which is considered as rewarding to the animal or person. Now, since this is reinforcement, even though it's negative reinforcement, it's still reinforcement. So it strengthens behavior because it stops or removes an unpleasant experience. Now, from the food lever experiment that we looked at in under positive reinforcement, we come to an electric current experiment, which was once again done on rats.
This time the rats
So
were traumatized.
yeah, this time the rats were traumatized, like little Albert Uno reverse. So now we have, now Skinner observed two different responses, like roughly two different responses, where what was done is now the lever was not used as a machine which would deliver food. It was used as an escape for the rats. So here what happened was the two responses were escape learning and avoidance learning. Now the first response, which is known as escape learning, as you might have like figured out from the name, was where the rats could escape the electric current. Skinner used negative reinforcement to train rats in his Skinner's box, where he would subject them to an unpleasant electric current. And then that current would be switched off as soon as they knocked the lever. As soon as the lever was pressed by them, the electric current would stop. In a split second, it would be gone. So just like they learned over time that food could be delivered by pressing the lever, now they learn over time that if they press the lever, the electric current can be stopped and they can escape that pain of the electric current and the agony that they felt because of that. So over time, they learned that they didn't even have to think before they immediately ran towards the lever so that the electric current could be stopped and they could escape the discomfort. And then as they repeated the action over and over again, they were fully conditioned to go directly for the lever and not wait even for like 2 seconds under the influence of the electric current. So this response was a learned response and it was called as escape learning. The second one that we will look at is known as avoidance learning. Now here Skinner taught rats to avoid the electric currents by using a light signal. What was done was that now the rats knew that pressing the lever would stop the electric current, but they had to face the electric current before they realized that they had to go for the lever. So Skinner taught them that whenever this light came on, you have to immediately go towards the lever and press it so that the electric current won't reach you. So now whenever the light came on, the rats over time learned that once the light came on, the electric current followed. So before the electric current can even reach us, we have to run towards the lever, press the lever so we can avoid the electric current altogether. This is why the second learned response is known as avoidance learning, because the electric current didn't reach the rats. They didn't let it reach them. They prevented it from even coming into the Skinner's box because they had pressed the lever much before the electric current even reached close to where it was.
Okay, so like in escape learning, they like go straight to the lever, like they're just going to the lever and just pressing the lever just to escape the discomfort of ever like repeating the electric shocks, right? But in the avoidance learning, they get a light signal when the electric current is going to start. So whenever they see the light signal, they go straight to the lever, right?
Yes. So like in escape learning, they have to face the current before they figure out that they need to go towards the lever. But in avoidance learning, they already know that the electric current is going to follow after the light has come on. So then they go for the lever even before the electric current reaches them.
Oh, it's like the how in horror movies the scary music starts first and then the slasher person comes to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you already know what's going to happen, and then the person who
Yeah.
has to escape, the person who has
Yeah,
to
that's
escape,
that's
whoever
when
is
I
after
know
them.
that, yeah, that's when I know I have to close my eyes.
Yeah, jump scare. So now we come to the next concept, which is punishment. Punishment is the complete opposite of reinforcement because it is designed to weaken or eliminate a behavior or a certain response rather than increasing it. Here, punishment can involve two things. It can either be applying an unpleasant stimulus or removing a potentially rewarding stimulus. Um, and over here, sometimes it's difficult to like distinguish between punishment and negative reinforcement. But negative reinforcement is basically like, to give you an example, if there is a football team and they like really hate doing drills, okay, they hate doing the shuttle run and then the hurdles and everything. So the coach reduces their warm-up time by like 5 to 10 minutes after they've won a certain match. So now they associate it with that, and now the team knows that okay, if we keep winning matches, we'll keep reducing 5 to 10 minutes from our hurdles or our drills. And so to avoid that pain and the boredom of the drills and warm up, they keep winning and they keep reinforcing their behavior is reinforced. The winning behavior is reinforced by it. And so they make sure that they keep winning and keep playing well so that they can keep on reducing the amount of time they have to do drills for. But over here, punishment is used to weaken a behavior, not strengthen a behavior. So both of them do have negative connotations, but punishment weakens a behavior and negative reinforcement strengthens a behavior. Now, just like reinforcement, even punishment is divided into positive and negative punishment. So the two distinct methods of punishment, positive and negative punishment, are as follows. The first one, positive punishment, it involves adding something unpleasant, positive plus sign. So adding something unpleasant immediately following a behavior in order to decrease the likelihood of that behavior happening again in the future. So here, it aims to weaken the target behavior by associating it with an undesirable consequence. To give you an example, a child receives a scolding from their parent immediately after hitting their sibling. So
Hmm.
this is intended to decrease the likelihood of the child hitting their sibling again. Positive punishment plus sign, adding something unpleasant. And this is done to weaken the target behavior because of an undesirable consequence. Example, when you get yelled at for hitting your sibling. Next, we have negative punishment. Now, negative punishment involves removing something rewarding. Negative minus sign. So removing. Removing something rewarding immediately following a behavior in order to decrease the likelihood of that behavior happening again in the future. This aims to weaken the target behavior by taking away something that the individual values or enjoys. To give you an example, a teenager loses their video game privileges for not completing their chores or not completing their homework. This is intended to decrease the likelihood of the teenager neglecting their chores again in the future.
Yeah, okay. This is the difference between negative punishment and in negative reinforcement. In negative reinforcement, they decrease the time of the thing that they already don't like. Like in the example drills, they don't like doing drills. So the time there is removed, like it's taken away from them. But in negative punishment, it's something that you like a favorable thing that you like is taken away from you. So if you ever get confused, then you can associate it like that.
Yes, it's easier to distinguish between negative reinforcement and negative punishment, not just punishment as a whole and negative reinforcement specifically.
Yes.
So, some of like the major consequences and also the most common consequences of punishment are, the first one is punished behavior is suppressed and not forgotten. So if you're punished for doing something, in the moment it will work on you and you won't repeat the behavior or you won't continue that certain behavior, but you're not going to completely forget that behavior. It's not going to be like, okay, now because I got punished this one time, I am not going to repeat this behavior ever again. Whether it happens consciously or unconsciously, you still end up repeating that behavior even though you were punished for it. And so punishment is not like a long-term solution to weakening behavior because it suppresses it, and then it leads us to the next point. After suppression, it causes increased aggression because you tend to bottle up things and the emotions that you feel after getting punished, and so you suddenly like have an uh, outburst of emotions where you like go on like a rage spree and you are like getting irritated over the littlest of things, and you are suddenly it sparks the aggression from a very small incident, but that's because of the bottled up emotions that you have.
Definitely. Okay. I don't know why I immediately like thought about this. But okay, let's get political. With wars, like if there is a specific war going on between two countries, and if the other country loses in that war, um, there won't be any war happening after that because like the consequences of the war, it lasts longer. But just because this it's not the war is not happening any soon for a while doesn't mean that it's not forgotten. Maybe the humiliation, because here like losing the war is like a punishment or a humiliation of starting a war for them. Okay, but just because like it's not happening now, it's not forgotten. And maybe the war will happen after some time again, and this time the result can be different. That's why in today's economy, when we are seeing about the relationship between different countries, it's not tied up because of war, it's tied up because what we are getting, because in reinforcement some kind of behavior is encouraged for the behavior is encouraged by showing something that will, it's beneficial for me. Like, I am studying now because if I study now, then I will get to play video games. And video games is something that it's beneficial for you because you think it's beneficial, doesn't mean that it is beneficial. But even in countries, the reason that we have this peace tide, or that not because do you really think all these people in high power want peace? It's because this country is in peace tide with this country because it's benefiting them in one way or other, like the economy is connected. Like I
Or
thought
it
of,
saves them from humiliation
yeah, like I
in
thought
case
about,
they lose the war.
yeah, like I thought about India and China. It suddenly came into my mind. I was suddenly in my history lesson where my sir was like, "Why do you think we are not having wars?" And not because, wow, do you think that they have forgotten this? Do you think they don't longer see us as enemy? It's not because of that. It's because our economy is connected with each other now because of globalization. And just because there is benefit, that's why there is no war. I don't know why I got here. I just
But it was
associate.
a good example.
Yeah.
It's easier to relate that way. The third consequence of punishment is that it creates fear that can generalize to undesirable behaviors. So, you may not have a fear of school, but the fear that you have of getting bullied at school may lead to um, it generalizing as a fear of school over time. So you might not really not like going to school, but because of the consequence of going to school is that you get bullied by people, you are you generalize the fear and then you just avoid going to school altogether. And the last one is it does not necessarily guide you towards desired behavior, uh, because reinforcement is what we should do. Like it shows us what we should be doing, but punishment shows us what we should not be doing. So even though punishment shows us what we should not be doing, it's not necessary that the complete opposite is what we should be doing. That's why reinforcement works better than punishment, because reinforcement points a direct finger towards what we are expected to do and what we should do, but punishment just tells us what we should not do, and so it sort of confuses us and in what direction we should be
Yeah,
going.
it's like prescriptive and prescriptive norms.
Yeah, like prescriptive norms tell you what you should not do, but then there is some kida within us. Like we are like, oh, why shouldn't we do it? Like, what if I just do it? Like, what's the worst that can
Yeah, but
happen?
like if I'm
Whereas
not supposed
prescriptive
to do
norms,
this, then what am I supposed to do?
yeah,
I
like what exactly am I supposed to do? Like you told me not to do this. Why? And then prescriptive norms, on the other hand, tell you what you're supposed to do. So it's just easier for you. They are like, ye karo, and you're like, okay, ye karte hain. You don't have to really use your own
because you
brain
need
and
everything
rebellion.
served in the platter. Like here, I am spoon feeding you. Do this.
Eat,
Yeah,
take.
yeah,
Now, I linked these concepts to the two types of regulatory focus that we've learned, promotion and prevention. So, reinforcement is based on promotion regulatory focus because it works on people who have that kind of regulation where they are like driven by achievement and goals and anything that is pleasure based and leads to like feeling good at the end of it. Whereas the ones that are driven by like fear of failure or fear of humiliation and anything that is pain based and sort of they want to avoid the pain, and so they depend upon prevention regulatory focus. So reinforcement works for people who focus on the good and the pleasure that they're going to get after achieving something, uh, and that's why they have promotion regulatory focus. But the people who depend upon pain and like the avoidance of pain, they benefit more from punishment, and that's because they have a prevention regulatory focus. So now to sum it all up, not all up, but like to
yeah.
sum up like with a quick distinction between classical and operant conditioning. The two main differences between classical and operant conditioning lie in their learning type and their learning process. So the learning type of classical conditioning, there is a passive or involuntary response to the stimulus, because it does not depend on a reward or punishment. It's without a reward or punishment. Whereas the learning type for operant conditioning is an active response or a voluntary response to the stimulus because it is influenced by a reward or punishment. Your action depends upon the reward or punishment, which is the consequence that you will be having. Now, the learning process of classical conditioning is learning by association, because a neutral stimulus like the ringing of a bell is paired with an unconditioned stimulus that naturally triggers a response. Whereas operant conditioning, the learning process is learning by consequence, where behavior followed by pleasant consequences, also known as rewards, is more likely to be repeated, while behavior followed by unpleasant consequences, punishments, is less likely to be repeated. So that was it for today. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Gooseberry.
If you're listening to this episode on Spotify, go check out our YouTube channel called as Gooseberry Podcast.
If you're watching this episode on YouTube, go check out our podcast on Spotify called Gooseberry.
Follow us on Spotify and YouTube so you're always on time for every new episode we release. Follow our Instagram for sneak peeks of the episode, behind the scene footage, fun reels, engaging story, and a whole lot more. Because I'm very funny, guys. So, like, please.
Yeah, she manages our Instagram. For any business emails and inquiries, email us at gooseberrypodcast, bizbiz, @gmail.com with the subject line, quote-unquote, business mail. All emails with subject lines other than this will be deleted immediately. To send us any feedback, email us on the same ID with the subject line, season, insert number, episode, insert number, feedback mail. All emails with subject lines other than this will be deleted immediately.
This was Gooseberry, your guide to understanding the fascinating interplay of psychology, trends, and the essence of being alive.
This is Sonia
And Nidhi.
signing off.